Hello people, in this video I want to address a recent discussion between, among other people, Vega V2, Agarin and Dantes about whether there is such a thing as proactive or reactive jungling and aggressive or passive laning, or whether there's just a correct play. And Vega V2 and Agarin both argued that there's only correct jungling and no reactive or proactive jungling, and I want to make an argument to the other side, and I want to say that there is such a thing. And the example I'm going to use to prove that is the game you see on your screen right now, which is poker. And by the way, this is a pretty random example. It's just the first video I pulled up because in poker this happens all the time. Because poker is also a game with incomplete information, just a League of Legends. And so what we're going to see in this situation is, let's imagine we're the moneymaker guy, right? We have aces, which is a pretty decent hand. And what's going to happen now is his opponent is going to go all in here. And what that now means is, in his shoes, we would have to make a decision between two possible lanes of play. We can either call the all-in, or we can fold the hand. And then, since we don't know the enemy's hand, from our incomplete information point of view, there's also two possible scenarios. Either enemy has a better hand, or they have a worse hand. And so, if we decide to call, and they have a better hand, then we lose, because we lose the hand. And if we decide to call, and they have a worse hand, then we win, because we win the bot. And if we fold, but they have a better hand, then that's good for us, because that's the least we can lose basically in that situation. And then if we fold and they have a worse hand, then we got bluffed, and so we just lost the pot for no reason. And now, if you ask poker pros what they would do in this situation, then they're going to give you like an answer, but honestly, they should always say, okay, I'm going to make this or that play a certain percentage of the time. So just to throw some numbers out, like let's say 70-30 or something. Right? It doesn't matter if that's accurate for this example. It just means like you should never make 100% this play, because for example, if in poker it was known that you never bluff, then you're just never gonna get called ever, because everyone just knows that you only like bet if you actually have decent hands. So then you need to move into bluffing a bit, and then like people are gonna balance that again, and that's the way the mind game goes, right? And in League of Legends, because it's also a game of incomplete information, it works the exact same. So let's say we have a situation where I'm the red side top laner and my opponent has built up a freeze on blue side, and I have currently no vision and info that enemy jungle is going to be top side. Then we have pretty much the exact same situation from the poker thing we just had. So I have two lines of play, basically. I can try to either contest the freeze, or I can just take the L, and enemy jungle can decide to either gank me, or they can farm or do something else. And this leads to a very similar table. If I decide to contest and they gank, then I die, so that's bad. If I decide to contest and they farm, then that's good, because then I got to break the freeze for free, basically, even though jungle was top. If I decide to take the L and they gank, then that's good for me, because I wasted enemy jungle's time. And if I decide to take the L and they farm, then that's bad for me, because I just lost the wave for no reason, and they didn't even have to use the time for that. And you could now argue that like it's correct to, let's say you argue it's correct for jungle to gank 100% of the time. Then what that would mean is, as the top, it would be correct for me to take the L 100% of the time, because that's going to lead to the best possible outcome for me, right? But if you look at it like this, then it starts to become correct for jungle to a percentage of the time, let's just say 5, to farm, because you know that I'm going to take the L 100% of the time, so you might as well sneak in some extra camps, and from your POV right now, it's just free value. Like, you would just be getting a worse result if you knew that I was taking the L 100% of the time, but you don't know that. So what actually ends up happening in practice is people spread between these, right? And that's where the thing comes in, where you have aggressive or passive players in lane, or proactive and reactive junglers, because proactive junglers are going to tend towards the gank a lot more, while reactive junglers are going to tend towards the farm side a lot more. And similarly with laners, the aggressive laners will try to contest the freeze a lot more, while the passive laners will take the L a lot more. And so that is, in my opinion, what differentiates the passive from the aggressive laners and the reactive from the proactive junglers. And if you were to ask me, okay, do you have an example of a player, then I would immediately spring to Malrang, or well, how Malrang used to play, which is basically he would go for a lot of these interesting ganks, let's say. So here he just queues over the wall and then basically waits until his queue is back up, which you can argue that that's the correct play. I wouldn't say so. I would say that this play is correct a certain percentage of the time. If you do this every game, like 100% of the time, then Caps is just gonna expect it every time, respect it every time, and then you just lose like time because Yike is gonna push it out with him every time, right? But then if you only do it like 20% of the time, then Caps is gonna be like, oh, okay, maybe he does it, maybe he doesn't. I'm gonna bet that he doesn't, and then you gank him, and then he fucked up, right? Because you won the mind game. And so that's why, in my opinion, there's no like single correct play in League of Legends, and it's always percentages. And in my opinion, that's one of the most interesting player skills to develop as well, because you have to do like a lot of reading into how your enemies play. You have to do research on your opponent and like learn if they're an aggressive or a passive laner or a reactive or a rather proactive jungler. And then if you're playing against Malrang, maybe you should respect things like this a lot more often than you would against a different jungler.